I'll expand Part 1. The exodus into a more detailed 900-word narrative with simple English, engaging storytelling, and Korean names as requested. The message arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. Commander Park Tae-ho stood in the dimly lit control room of Earth's deep space communication array, watching as the alien symbols translated across his screen. His eyes widened as he understood what he was reading. "Play it again," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. The technician nodded, and once more the plaintive message filled the room. "To any who hear this, we are the Viridians. Our sun is dying. Our children have no future here. We offer our knowledge, our service, our eternal gratitude to any civilization that will give us shelter. Please help us." Tae-ho ran a hand through his graying hair. This wasn't the first time the message had been received in known space. Reports indicated that the Viridians had been broadcasting for months, and the response from the galaxy's major powers had been uniform: rejection. "Get me a direct line to the UN Secretary," Tae-ho said. 3 days later, he stood before the United Nations Security Council, the recording playing for Earth's most powerful leaders. The chamber was silent when it finished. The Kronos Imperium turned them away, Tae-ho explained. They said taking in refugees would compromise their military readiness. The Meridian Commonwealth claimed they lacked resources, despite controlling 17 resource-rich systems. The Gen Collective cited cultural incompatibility as their reason. Secretary General Yoon leaned forward. "And what do you propose?" "Earth do, Commander? We barely have a foothold beyond our solar system." Tae-ho took a deep breath. "I propose we help them." The room erupted in voices. "Impossible. We can barely feed our own. This isn't our problem." Tae-ho waited until the noise died down. 200 years ago, parts of Earth became uninhabitable due to climate change. Millions became refugees in their own world. Some countries opened their doors. Others built walls. He looked around the room. History remembers which choice was right. Kim Min-ji, the South Korean representative, stood up. "How many refugees are we talking about?" Their transmission mentions approximately 2 million Viridians. 2 million! The American representative slammed his hand on the table. "We'd need a fleet of ships we don't have." "Actually," Tae-ho said, "we do." He pulled up schematics on the main display. Colony ships meant for Mars and Europa. Cargo, vessels, even some military transports. If we repurpose them all, and if we act quickly, we can do this. "At what cost?" asked the Chinese representative. Tae-ho looked him in the eye. "A better question is, at what cost if we don't?" The debate raged for days. News of the alien refugees leaked to the public, sparking protests both for and against the rescue mission. Religious leaders called it a moral obligation. Economists warned of collapse. Military advisors feared making enemies of the larger galactic powers. In the end, it came down to a vote. On the other side of the world, Song Ji-woo watched the results come in on her tablet. At 28, she was one of Earth's youngest starship captains, commanding a small transport vessel that ran supplies between Earth and the lunar colonies. "They actually voted yes," she whispered, hardly believing it. Her first officer, Lee Hyun-woo, looked over her shoulder at the results. "So we're really going to do this? Save an alien species?" "Looks like it." She scrolled through the notification that had just appeared. "And they want our ship." Within weeks, Earth was transformed. Shipyards that had been dormant for years hummed with activity. Scientists worked around the clock to adapt life support systems for alien biology. Diplomats prepared first contact protocols. The night before the fleet was to depart, Tae-ho found himself standing at the observation deck of the lunar space elevator, looking out at the assembled ships. They were a motley collection: cargo haulers, passenger liners, research vessels, and military escorts. But together they represented humanity's answer to a cry for help. His comm unit buzzed. It was Secretary General Yoon. "The Gen Collective just contacted us," she said without preamble. "They've warned that aiding the Viridians may result in diplomatic consequences." Taeho felt a chill. The Gen were centuries ahead of Earth technologically. Their disapproval was not something to take lightly. Did you tell them we're proceeding anyway? I did. There was a smile in Yoon's voice. I also told them that humanity remembers its own history, that we know what it means to face extinction, that we haven't forgotten how to help. The launch the next morning was broadcast globally. School children watched in classrooms. Workers paused to view it on their phones. Families gathered around screens in living rooms across the planet. Captain Song's voice echoed across the world as her ship, now renamed Hope Horizon, led the fleet away from Earth. We go not knowing exactly what we'll find, she said. We go because when someone asks for help, there's only one right answer. We go not just as representatives of Earth, but as reminders of what humanity can be at its best. As the fleet accelerated toward the jump point that would take them to Viridian space, Taeho watched from mission control, his heart both heavy and full. They were the youngest civilization responding to this crisis, with the fewest resources to spare. But sometimes, he thought, it's not about what you can afford to give. It's about what you can't afford to lose, your humanity. Captain Kim Ji-hoo leaned over the navigation console, her dark eyes mapping the spatial coordinates that would bring her fleet into Viridian orbit. Outside the viewport of the Hope Horizon, space stretched endlessly, stars blinking like distant promises. 3 weeks had passed since they'd departed Earth, and now the dying Viridian sun loomed ahead, an angry red giant consuming itself at an alarming rate. Status report, she ordered, her voice steady despite the tension gripping her shoulders. Science Officer Lee Hyunwoo looked up from his station, his face drawn with concern. Captain, the Viridian star is deteriorating faster than our projections indicated. Based on current readings, we have 3 weeks at most before total stellar collapse, not the 2 months their original distress call estimated. Ji-hoo's stomach tightened. 2 million Viridians, 3 weeks, 27 ships that had never been designed for a rescue mission of this scale. Bring us into stable orbit, she said, rising from her command chair, and open a channel to the Viridian High Council. As the fleet approached the 5th planet of the system, sensors revealed dozens of settlements scattered across the surface. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the first clear image of a Viridian any human had ever seen. The alien was humanoid, but with delicate, silvery skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern, blinked at them with obvious emotion. I am Elder Tal of the Viridian High Council, the being said, its translator converting musical tones into human speech. We had almost abandoned hope when your transmission reached us. No other civilization responded to our pleas. I am Captain Kim Ji-hoo of Earth, she responded. We've come to help evacuate your people. The alien's 4 eyes widened. All of our people? Ji-hoo nodded firmly. As many as we possibly can. Behind her, she could feel her crew exchanging glances. They all knew the math didn't work. Their ships could carry perhaps 500,000 refugees at maximum capacity. They'd need 4 times that space for a complete evacuation. We'll begin immediately, she continued. My officers will coordinate landing zones and boarding procedures. We need to move quickly. After the transmission ended, her first officer, Park Seo-jun, approached. Captain, with all due respect, we can't possibly save them all. We're going to try, Ji-hoo replied, her voice leaving no room for argument. Deploy the landing vessels. I want shuttles running continuously between surface and ships. Engineer Kang, begin converting cargo bays into living quarters. Dr. Bay, establish medical protocols for Viridian physiology. As the Earth fleet settled into orbit, another ship appeared at the edge of the system. Its sleek, predatory lines identified it immediately, a Kronos Imperium warship. They're hailing us, Communications Officer Song Ha-yoon announced. The screen revealed a stern-faced Kronos commander. Earth vessel, this is Commander Vex of the Imperium. We're here to observe the situation. Ji-hoo's eyes narrowed. The Kronos Imperium had explicitly refused to help the Viridians, calling them a resource drain and culturally incompatible. Their sudden interest was suspicious. We welcome your observation, Commander, she replied. diplomatically. Perhaps your ship could assist with the evacuation? The commander's face hardened. We are merely documenting the situation. The Imperium's position remains unchanged. Then please remain at a safe distance from our operation, Jihu said. We have work to do. The first shuttles descended to the Viridian surface within hours. Engineer Kang Do-hyun had modified the atmospheric filters to accommodate the slightly different composition of Viridian air, allowing the refugees to breathe comfortably aboard the human vessels. On the surface, Officer Park led the first contact team. The Viridians had gathered at designated evacuation points carrying only what they could hold in their four-fingered hands. Many were young, children by any species definition, their eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. Park activated his translator as a Viridian approached. We've arranged the evacuation by family units, the alien explained. The youngest will go first along with their caregivers. That's fine, Park replied, then hesitated. May I ask, why did the other civilizations refuse to help you? The Viridian's inner glow dimmed slightly. The Kronos Imperium feared we would dilute their genetic purity. The Meridian Commonwealth demanded our technological secrets as payment, secrets we are sworn to protect. The Gen Collective said we would disrupt their societal harmony. The alien tilted its head. Yet you humans came, despite having the fewest resources. Why? Park thought about this for a moment. Because it was the right thing to do. Back on the Hope Horizon, Jihu studied the latest solar readings with growing concern. Radiation levels were increasing exponentially as the Viridian sun consumed itself. At their current evacuation rate, they'd only rescue about a quarter of the population before the radiation made surface operations impossible. We need to work faster, she told her officers during their nightly briefing. Engineer Kang, what more can we do with the ships? Kang rubbed his tired eyes. We've already stripped out everything non-essential to make room. The only option left is to override safety protocols on life support and atmospheric density. Do it, Jihu ordered. Dr. Bae Min-jae frowned. Captain, that puts both humans and Viridians at risk. I'm aware, Doctor, but it's a calculated risk against certain death. As days passed, the Earth fleet worked without rest. Humans and Viridians labored side by side, learning each other's languages, sharing meals, exchanging stories. Cultural barriers fell away in the face of their shared purpose. A week into the operation, the Kronos warship was joined by vessels from the Gen Collective and the Meridian Commonwealth. All came to observe, yet none offered assistance. There, silent judgment weighed on Jihu as she pushed her crew harder, racing against the dying sun. During the second week, one of the Viridian children collapsed aboard a shuttle. Dr. Bae rushed to help, but the alien physiology confused even his advanced medical knowledge. I don't understand what's happening, he admitted to the distraught Viridian parent. The parent placed a shimmering hand on the child's forehead and began to glow brightly. Within moments, the child's eyes fluttered open. What did you do? Bae asked in amazement. We are healers, the Viridian explained simply. We can transfer our own life energy to others. It is why we chose not to reveal this ability to those who refused us. They would have enslaved us for it. Word of the Viridians' healing abilities spread quickly through the fleet. When 3 human technicians were injured by a radiation burst, Viridian healers saved their lives. The bonds between the two species grew stronger each day. As the third week began, the Viridian sun became increasingly unstable. Massive solar flares reached out like fiery tendrils, and radiation levels soared. Jihu ordered the final evacuation phase, knowing they would only save about half the population. Elder Tal, now aboard the Hope Horizon, approached her with dignity despite his grief. You have done more than anyone could ask, Captain. Those who remain understand their fate. Jihu slammed her fist against the bulkhead. It's not enough. To everyone's surprise, a communication came from the Meridian Commonwealth vessel. Earth, Captain, we have observed your persistence. The Commonwealth has reconsidered its position and will assist with the final evacuation phase. Jihu's eyes narrowed with suspicion. In exchange for what? Discussion of terms can wait until after the crisis, came the smooth reply. Despite her misgivings, Jihu accepted their help. With the additional Meridian ships, they might save another 250,000 Viridians. As the final hours approached, the Viridian sun began to convulse violently. Massive radiation waves swept through the system, threatening both the fleet and the remaining evacuees. "Captain," Sensor Officer Yoon Ji-woo called out, "a solar flare is heading directly for the evacuation zone. The final shuttles won't make it." Ji-hoo stared at the tactical display, making rapid calculations. Without hesitation, she gave her order. "Position the Hope Horizon between the flare and the evacuation zone. We'll shield them." "Captain," Park protested, "the shields can't withstand that kind of radiation." "Then we'll die with honor," she replied quietly. "Get those shuttles off the surface." Two other Earth vessels moved into position alongside the Hope Horizon, their captains making the same choice without being ordered. Together, they formed a barrier against the approaching solar death. As the flare struck, the ship's shields flared. Brilliant blue then began to fail. On the bridge of the Hope Horizon, systems overloaded and cascading explosions. "Shuttles clear," Communications Officer Song shouted over the chaos. "All remaining evacuees are away." Jihu smiled through the smoke filling the bridge. "Signal the fleet to jump to emergency coordinates. Get our people home." The observation vessels from the other civilizations watched in stunned silence as the three Earth ships held position against the solar flare, their hulls glowing white-hot from the radiation. When the flare finally passed, only one remained, intact enough to limp away. From the command ship of the Kronos Imperium, Commander Vex watched the scene unfold with an unfamiliar feeling stirring in his chest. Something that felt strangely like shame. Across the stars, the refugee fleet carried the survivors of two worlds toward an uncertain future, and the promise that compassion might yet prove to be humanity's greatest strength. Science Officer. Lee Hyun-woo hadn't slept in 36 hours. His eyes burned as he stared at the radiation readings climbing steadily across his monitor. The numbers didn't lie. The Viridian sun was dying faster than anyone had predicted, sending deadly waves of radiation across the evacuation fleet. "Captain," he called, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "We need to talk." Captain Kim Ji-hoo looked up from the holographic map where she'd been planning the next phase of evacuation routes. Dark circles rimmed her eyes, but her gaze remained sharp and focused. "What is it, Hyun-woo?" He projected the solar readings onto the main screen. "The radiation levels have doubled in the last 12 hours. At this rate, we'll have to abandon the operation within 3 days." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. 3 days. Less than half the Viridian population had been evacuated so far. The math was brutal. "What about our radiation shielding?" Ji-hoo asked. "It's already at maximum," Engineer Kang Do-hyun replied, stepping forward. "The shields were never designed to withstand this kind of stellar decay." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "We're jury-rigging everything we can, but we're losing ground." Ji-hoo's communicator chimed. On the small screen, a representative from the Zhen Collective appeared, one of the alien civilizations that had refused to help the Viridians but had sent observers to monitor the human rescue effort. "Captain Kim," the Zhen representative said, their voice artificially modulated to sound pleasant. "Our scientists have analyzed your situation. The Viridian star will reach critical collapse within 72 hours. We strongly advise immediate withdrawal with the refugees you've already saved." Ji-hoo's expression remained neutral. "Thank you for your concern. We'll take it under advisement." After the transmission ended, First Officer Park Seo-jun moved to Ji-hoo's side. "The Gen aren't wrong, Captain. If we stay much longer, we risk losing everything. The refugees we've already rescued, and our own crews." Ji-hoo stared out the viewport at the angry red star. "Call an emergency meeting of all ship commanders," she said finally, "and invite Elder Tal. Everyone needs to understand what we're facing." An hour later, the command center of the Hope Horizon was packed with human officers and Viridian representatives. The mood was grim as Hyunwoo presented the data. "We have 3 options," Ji-hoo said after the presentation. "First, we can withdraw now with the refugees we've already saved. Second, we can continue at our current pace and risk losing everything when the radiation becomes lethal. Third," she hesitated, "we find a way to shield against the increasing radiation." Elder Tal stepped forward, his silvery skin dimmer than usual, a sign of distress among his people. "We understand if you must leave. You've already done more than any other civilization was willing to do." The room fell silent. In that moment, something shifted in Ji-hoo's expression. "No," she said firmly. "We didn't come all this way to leave half your people behind. Engineer Kang, I need solutions, not obstacles." Kang looked startled, then thoughtful. "The Viridian ships we've salvaged have crystal-based technology we don't fully understand. If we could adapt it to our shielding systems, it would be untested," Hyunwoo warned. "Completely experimental." "Better than giving up," Ji-hoo replied. She turned to Elder Tal. "Would your engineers be willing to work with ours?" Elder Tal's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. "Of course, but I must warn you, our technology is deeply integrated with our biology. It may not function as expected when separated from our people." "It's worth trying," Ji-hoo insisted. For the next 24 hours, human and Viridian engineers worked side by side, attempting to integrate the alien crystal technology with Earth's shielding systems. The work was frustrating, with multiple failures and setbacks. "It's not compatible," Kang reported, exhaustion evident in his voice. "The crystals respond to Viridian bioelectrical fields. Our technology can't replicate that connection." Ji-hoo refused to accept defeat. "Then we need Viridians to operate the crystals directly." The solution they developed was unprecedented. Teams of Viridian volunteers would use their natural abilities to amplify the power of their crystals, which would then feed into the human shielding grid. It was dangerous work, requiring the Viridians to expose themselves to significant radiation. As they implemented the hybrid shielding system, disaster struck. A massive radiation burst broke through the fleet's perimeter, severely damaging 3 ships and injuring dozens of crew members. In the medical bay of the Hope Horizon, Dr. Bae Min-jae worked desperately to treat the radiation poisoning. "I don't have enough anti-radiation meds," he reported grimly, "and the cellular damage is too extensive for our regenerators." That's when a group of Viridian elders entered the medical bay. Without explanation, they moved to the bedsides of the most critically injured humans. Placing their 4-fingered hands on the patients, the Viridians began to glow with an inner light that grew blindingly bright. The humans in the room watched in amazement as burn marks faded and vital signs stabilized. Within minutes, patients, who had been at death's door, were sitting up, weak but alive. "What did you do?" Dr. Bae asked in astonishment. An elder named Suna answered quietly, "We are healers. Our bodies can generate restorative energy that repairs cellular damage. It is a gift we share only with those we trust." "Why didn't you tell us this before?" Ji-hoo asked. "Because it is why the Meridian Commonwealth wanted us," Suna explained. "They discovered this ability and demanded we serve as their healers in exchange for sanctuary. When we refused to be treated as living medical devices, they abandoned us." The revelation spread throughout the fleet, changing something fundamental in the relationship between the 2 species. The Viridians weren't just refugees to be saved, they were partners with extraordinary gifts to share. With renewed determination, human and Viridian teams implemented the hybrid shielding system. Viridian crystal operators worked in shifts, channeling their biological energy into the defensive grid. The shields held, allowing the evacuation to continue despite the increasingly hostile environment. From their observation vessels, the representatives of the Gen Collective, Kronos Imperium, and Meridian Commonwealth watched with growing unease. They had calculated that the humans would retreat. They had not anticipated this level of adaptation and cooperation. As the 3rd day dawned, Hyunwoo burst onto the bridge with unexpected news. "Captain, the radiation patterns have changed. The star is entering its final phase more rapidly than we predicted. But there's a 20-hour window where the radiation will temporarily decrease before the final collapse. Can we complete the evacuation in that window? Ji-Hoo asked. Hyun-woo shook his head. Not all of them, maybe another 30%. Ji-Hoo's expression hardened. Then we'll save 30% more. Inform all ships. We're staying through the window. She looked around at her exhausted crew. I know I'm asking the impossible, but every Viridian we leave behind is a person who will die. We don't give up while there's still hope. Park Seo-jun stepped forward. The crews will follow you, Captain. But you should know, the Kronos Imperium has withdrawn their observation vessel. Apparently, they've seen enough. Ji-Hoo's lips curved in a tired smile. Good. One less ship to worry about. What no one on the bridge knew was that aboard the departing Kronos vessel, Commander Vex was filing a report that would eventually shake the foundations of the Imperium's isolationist policies, because sometimes witnessing true courage changes even the most hardened heart. As the Hope Horizon and its sister ships pressed deeper into the radiation zone, protected by their hybrid shields and Viridian healers, humanity had crossed a point of no return. They had chosen compassion over self-preservation, cooperation over fear, and in that choice, they had become something greater than they were before. The breaking point hadn't broken them, it had transformed them. Captain Song Min-ho stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel Endurance, watching the dying Viridian sun through specially filtered view screens. The massive red giant pulsed ominously, its surface roiling with plasma storms that sent deadly radiation across the system. They had less than 12 hours before total stellar collapse. Status report, he demanded, his voice steady despite the exhaustion etched into his face. Communications Officer Yoon Ji-woo looked up from her station. The last 3 evacuation zones report they're at 70% capacity, Captain. The Hope Horizon and Guardian are covering zones 1 and 2. We're responsible for zone 3. Min-ho nodded, studying the tactical display. 3 Earth ships, positioned strategically around the planet, protecting the final evacuation shuttles as they ferried the last of the Viridian refugees to the waiting fleet. After 3 grueling weeks, they were down to the final hours, and the most dangerous part of the mission. And our unexpected guests? He asked. Ji-Woo's expression soured. The Meridian Commonwealth vessels are in position to assist with the evacuation. Their ambassador requests to speak with you. The view screen flickered, revealing the elegant features of Ambassador Niral of the Meridian Commonwealth. Her silver-blue skin shimmered in the dim light of her ship. Captain Song, she greeted him with practiced diplomacy. My government has authorized me to offer additional transport capacity for the remaining Viridians. Min-ho's eyes narrowed. The Meridians had explicitly refused to help when the Viridians first begged for assistance. Their sudden change of heart, 3 weeks into the evacuation, struck him as suspicious. We appreciate the Commonwealth's assistance, he replied carefully. May I ask what prompted this generous offer? Niral's smile didn't reach her eyes. Let's just say your people's persistence has been noted. The Commonwealth recognizes that the Viridians may have valuable contributions to make to galactic society. I see, Min-ho said, understanding perfectly. The Meridians had discovered the Viridians' healing abilities and now wanted access to them. We'll coordinate loading procedures with your vessels. But I should note that all refugees fall under Earth's protection until resettlement negotiations are completed. The ambassador's smile tightened. Of course. We can discuss details after the crisis has passed. As the transmission ended, First Officer Kang Ha-jun approached. They're vultures, he muttered, swooping in at the last minute to claim credit and demand concessions. They're still adding transport capacity we desperately need, Min-ho reminded him. Keep a close eye on their operations, but don't antagonize them. Ha-jun nodded and returned to his station. Minutes later, alarms blared across the bridge. Massive energy spike in the star's core, Science Officer Choi Yun-woo shouted. Solar flare forming, it's a big one. Min-ho leaped to action. Alert all ships and shuttles. Tracking? Yunwoo's fingers flew across her console. Projected. Path intersects with Evacuation Zone 3, our zone. Impact in 13 minutes. Minho's mind raced. There were still hundreds of Viridians waiting for transport in Zone 3, plus 3 shuttles already en route to the Endurance. If the flare hit, they would all be incinerated instantly. Recall the shuttles, he ordered. Emergency Protocol 7. Captain, Hajun protested, we can't possibly get everyone out in time. Minho met his first officer's gaze steadily. I know. That's why we're going to shield them. Understanding dawned on Hajun's face. The Endurance's shields can't withstand a direct hit from a solar flare that size. They don't need to withstand it, Minho said quietly. They just need to deflect it long enough for the shuttles to get clear. He turned to the communications officer. Jiwoo, inform the Hope Horizon of our situation. Tell Captain Kim to continue the evacuation. The Endurance will handle the flare. Jiwoo hesitated, then nodded, tears brimming in her eyes as she relayed the message. Within minutes, the Endurance had positioned itself between the oncoming solar flare and Evacuation Zone 3. On the planet below, Viridian families were being hurriedly loaded onto the remaining shuttles, many leaving behind possessions that had been packed in the desperate hope of preserving some fragment of their doomed civilization. On the Endurance's bridge, Minho opened a ship-wide channel. All personnel, this is the captain. In approximately 8 minutes, we will intercept a solar flare to protect the final evacuation shuttles. This is what we came here to do, to save lives, no matter the cost. It has been my greatest honor to serve with each of you. For Earth and for the future we're fighting to build. As he closed the channel, Minho turned to find his bridge crew standing at attention, saluting him. No one had abandoned their posts. No one had questioned the decision. Shields at maximum, engineering reported. We've rerouted all non-essential power. Evacuation shuttles 1 and 2 have cleared the danger zone, Jiwoo announced. Shuttle 3 is still loading. The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. On the tactical display, the massive solar flare stretched out from the dying sun like a fiery hand reaching to crush them. 2 minutes to impact, Yunwoo reported. Shuttle 3 has lifted off but won't clear the zone in time. Minho made another quick decision. Tractor beam on Shuttle 3. Pull them behind our shield perimeter. The Endurance shuddered as its tractor beam locked onto the fleeing shuttle, drawing the smaller vessel into the relative safety of its shadow. Impact in 30 seconds, Yunwoo said, her voice remarkably calm. Minho took a final look around his bridge. It's been an honor, he said simply. Captain, Jiwoo suddenly called out. 2 more ships are moving into flare intercept position, alongside us. Minho looked at the tactical display in disbelief. The Guardian and an unmarked vessel had moved to flank the Endurance, creating a wider defensive perimeter. The unmarked ship is Kronos Imperium design, Hajun said in amazement. They're hailing us. The screen flickered to reveal Commander Drav of the Kronos Imperium, his angular features set in grim determination. Captain Song. The Imperium doesn't abandon allies in battle. Before Minho could respond, the solar flare struck. The shields of all 3 vessels flared blindingly bright as they absorbed the initial impact. The bridge of the Endurance lurched. Violently, systems overloading and cascading failures as the raw power of a dying star crashed against them. Shield failure in progress, engineering shouted over the noise of exploding conduits. 10 seconds to breach. Divert all remaining power. To forward shields, Minho ordered, bracing himself against his command chair. Through the chaos, Jiwoo's voice somehow carried. Shuttle 3 is clear. All evacuation vessels report they've reached safe distance. Minho closed his eyes briefly, a smile touching his lips. Then we've done it, he said, as the ship's lights flickered and died. The last thing he saw before emergency systems took over was the tactical display, showing the remnants of the flare dissipating harmlessly into space, well away from the refugee fleet now accelerating toward the jump point that would take them to safety. On the bridge of the Hope Horizon, Captain Kim Ji-hoo watched in horror as the Endurance's signal vanished from her sensors. Captain Song, she whispered. Then, gathering herself, she turned to her crew. Begin jump sequence. We're taking these people home. As the refugee fleet prepared to depart the Viridian system, a heavily damaged ship limped from the dissipating remnants of the solar flare. The Endurance, against all odds, had survived, though barely. Its hull was scorched black, its systems failing, but its crew was alive. And on the observation deck of the Kronos vessel, Commander Drav stood in silence, watching as the human ships gathered their wounded and prepared to leave. For the first time in his long career, he had disobeyed direct orders from his government. For the first time, he had acted not as a Kronos commander, but as a being who could no longer stand by and watch courage go unmatched. The final hours of Viridian had revealed something unexpected to the watching galaxy. Not just the worth of a civilization that might have been lost, but the unexpected strength of the youngest spacefaring race, humans, who had proven that compassion was not weakness, but perhaps the greatest power of all. The spring air carried the scent of unfamiliar blossoms as Ambassador Choi Min-jung walked the path between flourishing fields. 1 year had passed since the Earth fleet had returned from Viridian space, bringing with them nearly 1 million refugees from a world that no longer existed. To her right, human farmers worked alongside Viridians, their four-eyed alien allies, using their silvery hands to coax extraordinary growth from Earth's soil. "The yield projections are beyond what we thought possible," said Director Park Jun-seo, hurrying to keep pace with Min-jung's long strides. He gestured to the fields stretching to the horizon. "The Viridian agricultural techniques have increased productivity by 63%. Combined with their soil enrichment methods, we're looking at solving food scarcity in regions that have struggled for decades." Min-jung nodded, making notes on her tablet. As Earth's newly appointed ambassador to the Galactic Council, she needed detailed information about the Viridian integration successes before next week's summit. "And the medical developments?" she asked. Jun-seo's face lit up with excitement. "Even better than the agricultural breakthroughs. The Viridian healers have been working with our medical researchers to understand how their biological energy transfer works. They've already developed treatments for 3 previously incurable diseases. The cancer remission rates are, well, they're nothing short of miraculous." They reached the crest of a small hill where a monument had been erected. Simple and elegant, it displayed the names of the 47 humans who had given their lives during the Viridian rescue mission. At its center stood a statue of the Hope Horizon, the flagship that had led the evacuation fleet. Min-jung stopped to pay her respects. She had known many of those named on the memorial, colleagues, friends, classmates from the academy. Their sacrifice had changed the course of human history in ways no one could have predicted. "Any word from the Kronos Imperium?" Jun-seo asked, quietly. Min-jung's expression tightened. "They've requested another meeting. This makes the 3rd this month. They still want access to the Viridian healers. They're being more subtle now, but yes." She sighed, watching a group of Viridian children playing with human children in a nearby field. "They've proposed a cultural exchange program that would just happen to include primarily Viridian healers. The integration of the Viridians into Earth society hadn't been without challenges. Initial resource allocation had strained already tight supplies in many regions. Cultural differences had led to misunderstandings. Some humans had protested against wasting resources on aliens when Earth had its own problems to solve. But those voices had gradually quieted as the benefits of cooperation became impossible to ignore. Viridian technology had revolutionized Earth's renewable energy systems. Their medical knowledge had saved countless human lives. Their agricultural expertise had turned struggling farms into abundant food sources. Min-jung's communicator chimed. "Ambassador, you're needed at the medical center," her assistant's voice announced. "Captain Kim has awakened." Hope flared in Min-jung's chest. She hurried toward the nearby shuttle pad, Jun-seo following close behind. "Is this the first time she's been conscious since the rescue?" he asked. Min-jung nodded. "The radiation damage was severe. The doctors weren't sure she'd ever wake up." Captain Kim Ji-hoo had led the Viridian evacuation, commanding the Hope Horizon through the mission's most dangerous moments. When a massive solar flare had threatened the final evacuation shuttles, She had positioned her ship as a shield, suffering catastrophic radiation exposure in the process. For a year she had lain in a coma, her body struggling to heal from injuries that should have been fatal. The medical center hummed with activity as Min Jung arrived. She was immediately directed to a quiet room at the end of a long corridor. Inside, she found Captain Kim sitting up in bed looking thin but alert. Beside her sat Elder Tal, the Viridian leader who had become a respected voice in Earth's new integrated government. "Ambassador Choi," Kim greeted her, voice raspy from disuse. "They tell me I've missed quite a year." Min Jung smiled, blinking back unexpected tears. "That's an understatement, Captain. You might not recognize the world you've woken up to." Elder Tal's silvery skin glowed with subtle happiness. "Captain Kim's recovery is a testament to what our peoples can achieve together. Our healers have worked alongside your doctors for months to repair the cellular damage." Kim looked down at her hands, which still bore the marks of severe radiation burns. "They tell me I shouldn't have survived." "Many didn't," Min Jung said softly. "But your sacrifice, all of your sacrifices, made something extraordinary possible." Later that afternoon, Min Jung stood at the window of her office looking out over New Haven, the first mixed human Viridian settlement. Originally constructed as temporary refugee housing, it had evolved into a thriving community that showcased the best of both civilizations. The architecture blended Earth's practicality with Viridian aesthetic sensibilities. The central plaza hosted weekly cultural exchanges where humans learned Viridian music and art, while Viridians studied Earth history and literature. Her assistant appeared at the door. "The Galactic Council representatives have arrived for the preliminary meeting." Min Jung straightened her jacket and gathered her materials. This would be her first face-to-face meeting with representatives from the major galactic powers since her appointment as ambassador. In the conference room, she found an unexpected assembly. Not only were the expected representatives from the Kronos Imperium, Meridian Commonwealth, and Gen Collective present, but also delegates from a dozen other civilizations that had previously shown little interest in Earth affairs. "Ambassador Choi," the Gen representative began, "we appreciate your willingness to host this preliminary session ahead of next week's full council meeting." Min Jung took her seat at the head of the table. "Earth welcomes all of you, though, I admit, I'm surprised by the level of interest in what was scheduled as a routine procedural meeting." The Meridian representative leaned forward. "There is nothing routine about what Earth has accomplished in the past year, Ambassador. Your integration of the Viridian refugees has been remarkably successful." "More than successful," added a representative from a civilization Min Jung barely recognized. "The technological and medical advancements you've achieved through cooperation have attracted attention throughout the galactic community." Min Jung understood the unspoken message. When Earth had rescued the Viridians, they had been seen as naive idealists, wasting resources on a doomed species. Now that those wasted resources had yielded unprecedented advancements, suddenly everyone was interested. "Earth and Viridian achievements are the result of mutual respect and cooperation," she said carefully. "Not exploitation or transaction." The Kronos representative's expression hardened. "The Imperium has proposed a fair exchange of resources for access to Viridian healing techniques. Some would call your refusal to share these advancements selfish." Elder Tal, who had silently entered the room during the exchange, spoke up. "What the Imperium calls fair exchange, we once called enslavement. The Viridian people share our gifts freely with Earth because Earth asked for nothing when they saved us." The room fell uncomfortably silent. Finally, the Gen representative changed tactics. "Perhaps we could discuss the human model of integration and cooperation. Many civilizations are interested in learning from your example." Min Jung couldn't help but smile at the irony. The human model, a term coined by galactic media to describe Earth's approach to the Viridian crisis, was being studied throughout the galaxy, praised for its effectiveness and compassion. The same approach that had been dismissed as naive idealism a year earlier. As the meeting progressed, Min Jung found herself reflecting on how much had changed. Earth, once considered a minor player in galactic politics, had become the unexpected moral center of interstellar relations. The decision to save the Viridians, not for gain or advantage, but simply because it was right, had resonated more deeply than anyone could have predicted. Outside the conference room, in a garden, designed by human and Viridian architects, Captain Kim slowly walked with Elder Tal, both still recovering from their respective traumas. "Do you regret it?" Tal asked quietly. "The price your people paid to save mine?" Kim looked up at the sky where stars were just becoming visible in the late afternoon light. Somewhere among them was the place where Viridian had once orbited, now nothing but scattered stellar dust. "No," she said simply. "Some things are worth any price." In that moment, in gardens and meeting rooms and farms and laboratories across Earth, humans and Viridians continued building something that neither species could have created alone. A future founded not on calculation or advantage, but on the revolutionary idea that compassion might be the most powerful force in the universe.